Why does Tom Morgan need to see this Greg Larkin clip? You're going to love this one. The Just Press Record guest returns. Jess Bost, I'm coming for you too. We get into life, how it only sort of ends at 36, what to do when you max out on your left hemisphere, and of course, why he and Dan Brown are maybe about to become friends. Jack Forehand, roll some clips.
Weirdly, someone once told me that like the first 18 years of your life, you're like building a person. And then the next 18 years of your life, you're building executive function. And then the next rest of your life, you're basically putting those skills in service of something you care about. And dude, the number of people who told me 36 was like a major turning point in their lives, including me, right? Like most people I speak to like blew up or had an existential crisis at 36 when they were on the wrong track or the right track. They just needed to go somewhere else. There's a place that people get to reliably where they've sort of maxed out on their left hemispheric skills and they now want to put them in service of like a more meaningful direction that is more fun for them and contributes more for the world. So I Googled the secret of secrets. The secret of secrets, spoiler alert, I don't think it is a spoiler because I haven't read the book yet, is that consciousness is non-local. It centers around Catherine Solomon, one of the characters. And basically the secret of secrets that the bad guys in the book are trying to repress is that consciousness is non-local. And Dan Brown went away for 8 years and studied all the contemporary science, as I have done superficially, and said that I no longer fear death. And this is a Copernican moment for consciousness.
All the trophies felt like atrophy. You know, it was like I'm diminishing my soul the more I stay here and become who they want me to be, the more damage I incur. And so once you have that, and I think most people who have a certain like threshold of success experience that in some way, you know, then it's like you're climbing the second mountain.
You're watching Just Press Record. Shoutouts to Epsilon Theory and Panoptica. I'm Matt Zeigler. This is an extra special Oh Snap, Guess What I Saw episode, and it's extra special because of the guest that I have here back with me today. I'm going to show him this Greg Larkin clip. We're going to see if he can guess why I needed to show him this specific Greg Larkin clip. But first, I stumbled into the office. I find this Ocean City, New Jersey hat. It's got all these pieces of paper, these quotes in it. Let me introduce him with these quotes. The serendipity. Who could find a hat with stuff like, I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. Oh, that must have something to do with this guest. What about, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. It's funny that that's in there too. What about this one? It's our dumb choices, Harry, that show who we truly are, far more than our abilities. I mean, the hits keep coming. And what about this? It's hard to know where you are when you're trying to read a map by the light of a falling star. You don't know that one, but there's a tie-in to this episode. Yeah, we're gonna plug Mishka Shubaly and the Mark Lanigan book, but more on that later. And one more quote in here. What kind of idea would be most powerful against Ahriman? What sort of truth would slay the dragon? I think you know who said that one right there. This is some serious Sherpa with a Sharpie talk. It can only mean one guest is upon us. The mystic Brit of Fintwit, the everyman Shaw man who's also my man, coming straight from the bleeding edge of the leading edge, direct as a butterfly in the sun. You and me today. It's Tom Morgan. How you doing, Tom?
Best intros in the world, man. Best intros in the world. Yeah. That's a gift.
Well, you know, this show, and we got to start right here. Flowers, a little round of applause or something like this. You're the inaugural guest. You're part of the reason this show exists. So I have to say, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, Jess Bost, I'm coming for you. Let the record show. But this was episode number 1. So this is a moment I've been really excited to get you back on. There's some serendipity of this. I think you were just starting the leading edge at the time. I don't even know if it existed yet.
It was in its infancy, maybe in the womb. Yeah.
In the womb, in its infancy, and you're about to hit capacity on the community? Or did you hit capacity already?
I mean, effectively at capacity. Yeah, 150. Yeah.
This is incredible. Part of this, too, was called out because I had Anna Goldfarb, who I don't know if you know yet, but Anna Goldfarb wrote a book about friendship and acquaintances, quoted Dunbar and Dunbar's number, actually got to go and meet with him and talk to him about it because she wanted to check if a metaphor she was using was going to be okay with him or pushing it. She got the thumbs up seal of approval from Mr. Dunbar himself. And I was like, oh my God, Tom has to hear the story too.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. I have to hear that.
We got to get Dunbar hanging out around you and the Bleeding Edge community here.
Yeah,
so the community...
We don't have, imagine if we didn't have room for Dunbar. We were like, sorry, dude, it's 151. You're 151. Like you understand as much as anyone else. We can't fit you in.
Dunbar gets that's like the equivalent of George Clooney having to sell the villa, right?
Yeah,
This is where this
exactly.
all comes back together. Okay, I can see how it's going. So the community off running and booming, is it the coolest thing you've ever done? How does this stack on accomplishments and the
Like I have a very short list of life accomplishments, so it's not very difficult to find the most impressive thing I've done. But it is. I wouldn't say it's the most impressive thing I've done. It's certainly the most fun thing I've done. It's like it's extravagantly, indecently fun, and hopefully other people are finding it as fun as well.
Okay, why do you think the people who have joined so far? I'm an outsider. I'm watching this. I'm having people shame me for not being inside this group out of time and love and constraints. But I'm seething at the edges, and I'm stalking a bunch of these people anyway. What do you think from being inside of the group makes it as rewarding and exciting as it is?
There's something going on, and I think we're going to talk about it. But there's something going on that people don't feel free to explore, and they don't feel free to talk about, and it can be. And it's related to personal growth and personal evolution. And that's like a super confusing area full of like bad incentives and biased people and complete nonsense. And the community has provided a place where I hesitate to use the word high agency because of how abused it's been, but like people who can get stuff done can speak to each other about relatively leading edge topics. And the other person at the other end of the conversation has high discernment, because when you have gone beyond the mainstream, you can end up in what I heard called contrarian delusion the other day, which is such a great phrase. It's like, and you know it, you know when you see contrarian delusion. And so it's very tough where you know the existing paradigm is broken and you're waiting for the new paradigm to come, but you can go into some really weirdo rabbit holes or dangerous places.
I think this is a perfect segue. Like I said, you're going to see if you can guess by the end why I wanted to show you this clip, if it's not obvious for 18,000 reasons. Jack Forehand, you got this Greg Larkin clip queued up. Shout out again to Mishka Shubali, who's part of this episode too. Greg Larkin, let's hear the story. Roll that clip.
All right, my journey. Yeah, I started my career after the Red Cross. I got a degree in economics. Wound up working for a investment research startup called Innovest. I was the first person to publicly predict the 2008 financial crisis from while I worked at Innovest. Innovest got acquired, and so I kind of made this. By the way, Innovest was completely punk rock. Like, it was these weird miscreants and freaks and like fuck the system type people who were like, we're going to analyze markets and just shove it up the ass of everyone on Wall Street. It had this total fuck you-ness about it, which suited my personality very well, for better or for worse. And then, of course, the thing that happens when your startup is good at what it does is that you get acquired by the people you hate. It's division. We got acquired by this division of JP Morgan, which then got acquired by a division of Morgan Stanley. And then I worked on Wall Street for 12 years, this like punk on Wall Street. And then I left. I wrote a book about my experience called This Might Get Me Fired. And I now have a executive community called Punks and Pinstripes, which is kind of for, I would say, like executives and entrepreneurs who are in the second mountain of their careers, right? Like they experienced what I did. They had the exit, they got into the executive leadership, they have the money, the respect. And at a certain point, like all the trophies felt like atrophy. You know, it was like, I'm diminishing my soul for long. The more I stay here and become who they want me to be, the more damage I incur. And so once you have that, and I think most people who have a certain like threshold of success experience that in some way. You know, then it's like you're climbing the second mountain. where you still have fire in the belly, but it's really important for you to do the best work of your life as the truest version of yourself. And so like the reason I started Punks and Pinstripes is because I think most executive communities are out there to help people climb the first mountain. And that can be really alienating, and it can make the problem worse when you reach that stage in your life where you're like, yeah, it's not me anymore. Do I have to shoehorn? If I want some compassion and solidarity and community, do I have to like shoehorn myself into a convention center in fucking Tempe, Arizona?
All right, so I don't even want to introduce I don't want to poison this well at all. You don't know Greg Larkin? This is the first time you've ever heard any of this stuff?
Nope. Yeah.
All right, so what hits you right off the top with all the stuff that Greg just threw on the table in, 120 seconds?
Inject it into my veins. Inject all of it directly into my veins. Like the way a guy's completely winding orthogonal career path takes him to exactly where he needs to be. The punk rock actually being the thing that seems to work for him rather than the road more traveled. And the concept of this, I really hesitate to use the word second mountain because I don't like it for a lot of different reasons, but like the idea that once you've ascended to the mountaintop and you look around and you're like, what next? And there is no community and no resources for that. And indeed, you're often made to feel like you should be just grateful to be at the mountaintop rather than looking around. These are all things that I run into. I was calculating today, back of an envelope, I probably had 2,600 conversations over 5 to 10 years with people in some sort of transitional state, wide divergence, but like, let's say mid-career, 45, very accomplished. And everything he just said feeds straight into that.
Greg's been doing this for a handful of years now, which is part of why I'm so excited to introduce the two of you to each other. And it's that thing. He's like, how many people can you possibly meet? And he's like, it starts off with yourself. And I wonder, you had some version of this experience too. He's like, I was accomplished. I'm going to these crush it summits or whatever else. And at some point you're like, oh my God, is this it? We go to another crush it summit and these are I'm going to use that word, the high agency peers around us. And are we all really just deluding ourselves into thinking that this is any meaning, purpose, like we have any reason to be here that actually fills our souls in some way? Why is there no community of people that see the same weird thing that I'm seeing right now?
Well, you and I are both big fans of Ben Hunt. And having been running this community for like only 18 months, it's a common knowledge game. It's arguably, no, not arguably, it is the most interesting common knowledge game I've ever seen by a long way, where I'd say 80% of the people that I speak to have had some sort of mystical experience or some sort of sense that there's a there. 100% of the people that I speak to are interested in these topics. And close to all of them are convinced that they are the only people that they know are interested in these topics. Right? It's just like that math doesn't add up. Like it doesn't add up. And I think it's still, I think it's good reasons. Let's say like you're out beyond the fringes, right? Let's say you're interested in UFOs, right? Like if you find out your boss is like really into UFOs, like running a private equity company or running a hedge fund or running an investment bank, like, and he like, leans over to the water cooler and is like, so how about those UAP disclosure videos going through Congress? There's still this stigma that a lot of these topics are for people with like psychosis and low discernment. Like it's professionally dangerous to take an interest in fringe topics. It really is, because it implies a lack of discernment rather than excess of curiosity. Well, excess implies bad, but a lot of curiosity. But then also there's this deeper thing, which is like when people's consciousness evolve, they typically see the stupidity of playing zero-sum games. And finance, God bless it, is still mostly a zero-sum industry. You are looking for the guy that can run your money, that wants to kill everyone else on the, on the trading floor, that wants to beat everyone else in the octagon. And so the idea that this guy suddenly might be interested in spirituality, dude's lost his edge. That's adorable for him, but I am redeeming right now. So all of this area, particularly on Wall Street, is really dangerous for people to speak to. It is getting less so, but it is still a common knowledge game.
I need to introduce this because I want to contrast and compare than contrast some of the stuff Greg says with the other reason we're having this conversation. You just put up this post, The Sword That Slays the Dragon. And I see a ton of overlap in the things that Greg's talking about, even if we're not going to call the second mountain in your language.
Mhm.
But I see a ton of overlap, and I'm really drawn to this, especially the Christ part, the Aramonic part. Like, I'm really drawn to how you see that career progression line up over these other categories. Can you explain what's going on in this new piece?
Yeah. There's a place that people get to reliably where they've sort of maxed out on their left hemispheric skills, and they now want to put them in service of like a more meaningful direction that is more fun for them and contributes more for the world. Weirdly, someone once told me that like the first 18 years of your life, you're like building a person. And then the next 18 years of your life, you're building executive function. And then the next rest of your life, you're basically putting those skills in service of something you care about. And dude, the number of people who told me 36 was like a major turning point in their lives, including me, right? Like most people I speak to like blew up or had an existential crisis at 36 when they were on the wrong track or the right track. They just needed to go somewhere else. And the problem is that there's almost no way of explaining this, which is why people get so stuck. But basically, the transition that people go through, I put neurologically as moving from left hemisphere led to right hemisphere led, but effectively aligning with a holistic intelligence that leading edge science increasingly understands is a thing, but ultimately is like emergent and unpredictable and emotional and somatic and non-logical and non-verbal, all these things that our society and our neurology mostly denigrates massively. And so like you end up in this situation where you have the call to adventure, right? Like you understand something in your bones, you've got to go and do something, but our entire materialist paradigm denies the existence of the very force that's going to hurt you going to help you, which means that people get really, really stuck and really, really suicidal because the paradigm doesn't include the thing that's going to help them out. And the problem is that all the language around that force and that intelligence, it's either like alienatingly spiritual or dead and scientific or like loopy and fringe. And it's also charged that it's very difficult to have that conversation without annoying someone. But the fact is that, years of research on my behalf and direct experience makes me think that it's a thing. And there are ways of interacting with it in very practical ways, but it's a thing.
Say more about coming into awareness of it as a thing, because I think you don't hear it talked about, you don't see it. You might bump into an article or something like this that you've shared, that you've written about it, and you go, oh, I'm not the only person thinking about this thing. I'm in that like 36-ish-year-old club too. That was where it's like the ball clearly started unraveling as opposed to getting tighter and tighter put together. So this resonates.
All right. So let's do this in boring science terms first, because that's my way into everything. There's entropy. I'm sorry, Matt, you're going to die, right? Things fall apart, particularly when you start hitting 40. And then there appears to be a symmetrical force, which some people call syntropy, which is the idea that things get more integrated and complex. One of the metaphors I've heard for this is that the odds of you and I sitting here having this conversation are the same as a tornado going through a junkyard and assembling a working 747. That basically there is a force that biases random interactions towards this strange complexity that we find ourselves living in. And the rebuttal to that is there's an infinite number of planets in the universe. It had to happen here once. Maybe there's multiverses, yada, yada. That is an equally valid argument. It's just one I no longer subscribe to. And so you have this situation where you're like, okay, there's a force that operates at the same time as entropy. And you can call it syntropy. I quite like that word. And therefore it acts on us. And then you have to ask what complexity is. And complexity is differentiation and integration. Something complex is made of very, very many differentiated parts, but yet they are all seamlessly integrated. For example, do you know what your gallbladder does?
Not literally. I mean, it bladders some gall.
Yeah.
Sure.
Literally, no one, thank you for not blowing my shtick, because no one I've ever asked that question to knows what the gallbladder does, right? But there it is, like wherever it is in our body. I don't even know where exactly it is. Here it is, somewhere in the middle, right? Like it's doing a
My
thing.
liver. Yeah.
It's doing a thing, and it's doing that thing completely seamlessly. So you are made up of an infinitesimal number of really differentiated parts, cells, organs, tissues that come together to make a whole that operates with such integration, you don't even have any conscious control over any of it, thank God, right? So the biggest mistake that we make as human beings is to imagine that that process terminates randomly at the edges of our skin, right? That like, okay, we're the apex of this, and we don't exist in a system that is also optimizing for differentiation and integration. Okay, let's bring this down a level of abstraction. What it means is that the universe is constantly optimizing for something that almost sounds like a paradox, which is you being the best Matt that you can be, the thing that puts you in flow, the thing that you find incredibly easy and everyone else finds boring or annoying. And yet that thing has to be integrated into the system, which then answers your second question as what the hell does that mean? It means feedback. And it means feedback. If you want to think about the guys that I've seen that are thriving in this context, once they've already gone through the overt success stage of their careers, which is not to denigrate that, it's people that attribute a very, very high level of intelligence to the environment that they're in. And they don't necessarily need to know what's causing it, whether it's syntropy or God or, the Tao or anything. They're just like, reality is probably pretty smart. Reality is giving feedback to me all the time. And one of the major things that you can work with is synchronicity, which is, crazy coincidences. I had one earlier this week with the author Dan Brown that we could talk about later. But like, I find the crazier the synchronicity, the more likely it is that you're on a reasonable path. I regard that as direct feedback from an intelligent environment that I'm going in the right direction. So it's like you have this thing which is like, what are you going to love? How are you going to find what you love? And then you're going to do it in service of love. And when you do that, everything kind of works out, as cheesy as that sounds.
Well, here's the cheesiness. I want to take it. I want to take it to Dan Brown because I think this is a good story. B, I had a weird thing with Dan Brown that happened to me 25 plus years ago, which was reading. I don't remember, probably because I was listening to Art Bell on the radio and stuff like that as a teenager. And I ended up reading this, like some crazy Knights Templar stuff that I found in the library. And that led me to Foucault's pendulum and some other stuff. And then the Da Vinci Code comes out. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, did I incept this book? Did I incept like a better version of the really hard books I just struggled through? And now this guy just gave me a movie script that I read on a Sunday afternoon. But it's always stuck with me. It's a weird thing. It's just a weird thing that happened. You had a Dan Brown moment, what, like a week ago? What is this?
Tuesday of this week.
Yeah, tell me the story.
Well, it needs a preamble as to why it matters. So I've been going down all these crazy Knight Templar rabbit holes and
which are so fun.
So fun.
So fun.
Okay. So it actually relates directly to what I was just talking about, which is there's this frame break in people's lives, which is like actually understood in terms of developmental stages, where people understand that they're usually going out in these kind of concentric circles of human development and stages of growth. And there's a point in your life where you understand there's also something making everything grow, that there's a force driving your conscious evolution, and you can actually interact with that force. And that frame break is usually very, very, very dramatic for people. Now, what does that actually mean? How does that happen? Well, so one of the members of Bleeding Edge, I interviewed her a couple of months ago, and she was rafting in Ecuador, and she went over the wrong waterfall and she died. And she reports leaving her body, which was smashed to pieces. And she thought to herself, God, my parents are going to be so hard on my sister because she's really adventurous, and I really hope they find my body, yada, yada. And then she came back into her body. And for the 20 years since, she basically has had her perspective, as she calls it, no longer matter bound. She's become highly intuitive. She works with what she calls evolutionary intelligence. Effectively, she has increasingly direct access to this force that's making everything grow, that's making everything evolve, right? What was the initiation ritual at the center of all of these mystery schools, including the Knights Templar, including like the ancient Egyptians, like Stonehenge, Chartres Cathedral, everything? You would go into these rooms, and often they think it was like a sound frequency, but there would be some means of eliciting an out-of-body experience. And the moment you have an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience, you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I am not entirely confined to matter. And then everything changes, right? Like, to go into sort of the tech billionaire thing, like the Brian Johnson, Peter Thiel types, how does their perspective change if suddenly they're like, oh, okay, there's some part of me that is not bound to my body and therefore might actually persist beyond it. And actually the purpose of my existence probably is to evolve that thing, maybe over multiple lifetimes, but at least over this one. It's suddenly a huge frame break, which is why it was the central initiation to any leader that was going on this path. That, you know, that all the douchery that they were doing because they were trying to get theirs before they died suddenly went away because they realized that they weren't going to die in any traditional sense. The die before you die was literally the point of the Eleusinian mysteries, which every single leader in the Mediterranean went for like 2,000 years. So you have this, right? Okay, get to the point, Tom. You're going to notice a lot of this. Dan Brown. So this week I'm writing a piece that has a lot of other themes in it, but one of the central ones is like, is any of this insane nonsense that I'm talking about going mainstream? Like, I'm tracking this, but you know, you're a finance professional. You know that one man's confirmation is another man's confirmation bias. The only people I interact with are people that are interested in these topics, and they are not mainstream. So I was like, okay, well, Jeremy Renner, like he's in the world's largest movie franchise, Avengers, and he got run over by a 7-ton snowplow. And now he's going around telling the world that he basically went to heaven, had a life review, and understood that everything's connected and the soul survives the body and he no longer fears death. I'm like, that's a data point. You have like the Diary of a CEO guy, Stephen Bartlett, who's one of the kind of productivity bro genre. One of his great friends comes on the podcast and says that she now speaks to her late husband and understands that there's life after death. She's a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist. She said she would have sectioned or committed herself if she had came into her office with saying these things. You know, there's Tim Ferriss, you know, productivity bro, who's now interviewing Bruce Grayson on NDEs, near-death experiences. It's there. But anyway, I was writing this on Tuesday morning being like, am I making this up? Like, do I want to find this data? And anyway, my wife is a national anchor for a major news channel. And she texts me as I'm writing on Tuesday to say, I'm interviewing Dan Brown. You might be interested in what he's saying. Now, my wife, God bless her, is much more successful than me and also like delightfully disinterested mostly in what I'm doing. Different stage of life, you know, doesn't care, which is a good thing because if she took me seriously, I'd be in real trouble. And anyway, she says, you know, check out his new books, The Secret of Secrets. So I Googled The Secret of Secrets. The Secret of Secrets, spoiler alert, I don't think it is a spoiler because I haven't read the book yet, is that consciousness is non-local. It centers around Catherine Solomon, one of the characters. And basically the secret of secrets that the bad guys in the book are trying to repress is that consciousness is not local. And Dan Brown went away for 8 years and studied all the contemporary science, as I have done superficially, and said that I no longer fear death. And this is a Copernican moment for consciousness, where we understand that, like, you know, the sun does not revolve around the earth, and that consciousness is non-local. And this thing is going to come into the zeitgeist. And there are already signs that are in loads of different ways, I think. And it's a common knowledge moment, I think.
It's interesting because it shows up on all those levels. Like if Tim Ferriss and Dan Brown are both talking about the same thing, it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point. I got to ask you about this too, because it made me think about this when you were just on that explanation or a little bit before. I think it's a Seinfeld thing. And it's the explanation on not just how old you are, but how old you are in comedy years. Have you encountered this before?
No, tell me more.
I think about this all the time because I think this is such a wonderful, especially when you're new to something or you're doing like for me, 36, 37, the ball starts unraveling. Somewhere around 40 is when I finally feel like I get my arms around it. There's this Seinfeld thing. And it'd be like he meets a comedian. Somebody's been doing it for a few years and they come up to him and they're, you know, he's like, hey, you did good. He's like, how old are you in like comedy years? And they're like, I don't know, I'm 35 years old or I'm 40 years old. I'm 20 years old. Yeah. How old are you in comedy years? When did you start comedy? Like, oh, I started 5 years ago. It's great. You're a 5-year-old. We're basically in kindergarten right now. Like, don't worry. Middle school's next, then high school, then maybe college. Maybe you'll get your PhD after that. But right now, like, you're not Doogie Howser and you're in grade school. And that's okay. There's something with common knowledge and there's something with moments like this. And I'm wondering too, if it's some of the people that are finding you in the community and finding Greg in his community too, where it's like, we're young in this thing of encountering the way we feel and talk about these things. And we're figuring out how to talk about them in elementary school, which is very different than adult ways we're going to figure out how to talk to them as decades go forward. How's that hit you?
There's a nuance to it that I think is super interesting. Like I think of like life in midwit memes now.
Sure.
And there's this.
Why wouldn't you?
There's who was it? Oliver Wendell Holmes, I think it was. He said that, you know, for the simplicity on this side of complexity, I would not give a fig, but I will give my life for the simplicity on the other side of complexity. And what I find is that you have these people who often have started their lives in relatively dogmatic or magical thinking religion, which is like, you have to believe this literal set of propositional facts in order to have to be saved. And then you go through this adolescence where you're like, well, all of that was incredibly stupid. I'm rejecting all of it. And then you go into this adulthood where you're like, oh, wait a minute, I need to start over again because actually I need to stop taking all this stuff literally and I need to take it metaphorically. And once I start taking it symbolically or metaphorically, I gain a completely different understanding of it. So that process seems to start at like 36, but like you're starting again, but you're starting again from kind of the simplicity beyond complexity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think that there's a specialness to it, and back to like the Seinfeld version of that, because like what is comedy, but understanding like the poetry of the ridiculousness and the absurdity of these patterns, and approaching that with not a bunch of ego, but like a willingness to like play with all these patterns now, as opposed to the first time they're forced upon you, then you start to unpack them and weaponize them for yourselves, and now all of a sudden you're like, no, they're all just there. What if I just start playing with all of them? Yeah. And what if this isn't a burden to me? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, think about like Larry David, right? Like, and to an extent Seinfeld, although he didn't travel over the Atlantic as well as things like Friends. So I'm not as steeped in Seinfeld lore as my wife is. But like Larry David has this unbelievable ability to speak things into existence. Like middling. Right? Like there's a whole, like, for people who don't know, like there's a whole episode about like whether you have the sufficient charisma and gravitas to sit in the middle of the table at a dinner party, or if you're too introverted to sit there. So like my entire family, when someone sits down in a middle seat, and the whole family just goes, oh dude, you're not a middle, right? Like everyone roasts each other with that. Like everyone knows exactly what you mean. Or like the chat and cut, when you cut a line to chat with someone that you don't actually need to chat with. Like whenever you see someone doing it like that, to chat and cut, he has given a word to something that we already thought was true. And there's something to that in terms of great narratives where like the very nihilistic kind of like atheistic perception of all these things is it's all made up. It's all a fiction, right? Nothing really ultimately means anything. It's all human construction. And then when you actually understand the depth of it, you understand that like, oh, okay, 11 of the top 15 highest grossing movies ever all have the same narrative structure. Not because that narrative structure is randomly appealing. It's because that narrative structure literally describes a phase change. And in the specific place we are in history, it describes exactly the phase change that I'm talking about in terms of the perception of non-local consciousness. Like, that's an awful coincidence, but it's the story we tell about how things change, which has always been the case. That process has always been the case.
For you to put this out there in the world, in the universe, really, how do you want to help people have this communication or not feel weird about having this communication, shy about it? Is it just like you got to put these posts out there, you got to show up in different places and say, hey, look, I'm Tom Morgan, I'm talking about this stuff and it's okay? And then, and I'm positive, the inbound messages come to you. People are like, I've never told this to anybody else, but I'm going to say this to you right now. Like,
people are dying. People are killing themselves. I spoke to a young man yesterday who's in a tough spot because of the worldview that he holds. People have died around me in their lives because their lives and finance were dependent on a worldview that is no longer correct, which is you live in an indifferent box of atoms that doesn't care about you, and there is no right path for you that maximizes your skills. And so your job is to sit there at your desk and drown out the call to adventure that doesn't make any sense, because the call to adventure is not actually a thing, right? And so you drown it out, you get some horrifying habits. I mean, this happened to me, like I'm not preaching, like this literally is my story. or you realize you're better off dead. You're either suffering so much, or your life insurance policy or whatever it is, you're better off dead, and you'll kill yourself, literally or figuratively. There's a lot at stake here, and I actually believe kind of every problem globally now is downstream of consciousness. Like we have the ability to get enough food in everyone's belly, right? Like basic stuff. We have the mechanics at minimum to do that. So pretty much every problem is downstream of consciousness, which makes this non-local consciousness idea, I think, the most important idea in the world, right? Like I find me another one. And it's interesting because it doesn't seem to get very much attention.
Yeah. It's a super idea. It's a super idea, Tom. No, and like that, it seems to be overarching everything. Besides the community, is there any other way that you think you can do your part to make that more of a part of just the zeitgeist conversation, to tip that common knowledge? Or is the most you can do at the micro level?
I think I've got to be careful about ego, right?
Yeah.
Is that
part of why I ask? Because I think this is a really hard part. And this is shout out to Greg for Greg's not high profile beyond a certain level. You'll find out about him. Like most of it is no, we're going to get 12 people around a table in a member's house.
Yeah.
And that's the only way this is ever going to go.
Yeah.
We'll do some bigger events and other stuff, but the rest is like, can't be bigger than this.
It's really complicated, man. Like, so on the one hand, I have not originated any of the ideas in which I deal. You know, I'm dealing Ian McGilchrist, who I think is the finest thinker of our times. I am dealing Ervin Laszlo, you know, Ulysse Corpo, John Vervaeke, all these guys who are intellectual giants. I regard myself as a conduit for their ideas rather than the originator of my ideas. And one of the flaws in my writing is I'm constantly citing other people's names, but I live in fear that someone will think I'm just ripping off other people's ideas. And I think there's something really dangerous about the people that do that. And then they're like, listen to me, guys. I'm the oracle here. I have seen very few people run communities, even my size, who don't eventually fall prey to like money, sex, and power. And so there is this kind of messianic edge to this stuff where it's like, I'm going to be the guy that gets this non-local consciousness message out because I will save the world. And that doesn't end well for anyone in my experience, right? Like, even if it's not your idea. And part of the reason why I kept leading edge at Dunbar's number was like, I've met a lot of people that are like, really, my first task is to impact 1 billion people. And I'm like, cool. Can you pay your bills? Right? Have you impacted one person? Right? Like, try running a community for 150 really high agency demanding people on the evolution of their consciousness. And then tell me if you can run one for like 15,000 people, right? Without turning these people into like avatars and abstractions, right? Like, but the one thing that most people don't take seriously enough, in my opinion, is the butterfly effect. That if you get one awesome person closer to this idea, and then you get their agency closer to this idea, the impact that they can have first, second, third derivative down the line is enormous. So if you focus your agency on curating a small group of like 150 people as well as you can, that group becomes emergent, and then the group does the work, not you as some sort of guru savior.
I love that explanation, not just because indirectly you tied it back to the butterflies on the sun tweet that I saw you put out earlier. But that butterfly effect, I think, is really important. I think it's massively underappreciated, where if you can just make a meaningful difference in one life, you don't know how that compounds, extracts, whatever else.
Dude, and I get triggered a lot because I get triggered a lot for a lot of different reasons. But like, I get triggered a lot when I see people saying, I'm not going to meet with this person because they don't seem important enough. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand how reality works, right? Like, if you're only meeting the guys who are like obviously the most important, it may be the person who seems to be the least important that is going to have the most impact on the world. And you're cutting that off arbitrarily. Like, I understand why people do it. They're busy. Like, if you're Jamie Dimon, right, you probably only want to meet like the most important people in the world. You're not taking every meeting that comes to you. We only have so much time. But people who aren't Jamie Dimon, like being very protective of their time, there is a part of me, there is a dragon in me that wants to protect all of my time and have me just doom scroll on the couch and do nothing. And so I trigger that part of myself deliberately by saying anyone that ever wants to get on my calendar, I will let on my calendar eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Maybe
Yeah.
not now, maybe not tomorrow, maybe
Yeah.
not in the middle of the Liverpool game, but eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
A man has to have priorities. All right. You're going to guess inevitably wrong because I wrote this down before we talked. Why do you think I needed to show you this clip today? You want to take a guess at what I wrote down on the back of this card?
I mean, because we agree about everything, but today, I got nothing.
All right. So I'm going to accept that because it's from you, that nothing is a humble and appropriate answer. So this is what I wrote down. I put, there is a dragon. You are a dragon slayer, and we're all waiting to see if you can figure it out. I think there is a call to both realizing that the dragon is not literal, but it is indefinitely there in your life.
Yeah.
And I want to see if you can figure it out. And I feel like as I meet lots and lots of people as part of this leading edge community that you built, this unanimous, it is almost at the point where somebody's talking to me and I'm like, you're in Tom's group, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're in this group because I see this wheel turning and I see that you know there are dragons to be slain and you've already killed one.
Yeah.
And now you're looking for another one. That's a really special thing.
You know what it is, man? I think for most people, it's wild, right? Like it's full Kaiser Soze, greatest trick the devil ever pulled, is telling us that there's no connection between money and spirituality, right? Like I earned, or even consciousness. Like I joined a boatload of like quote unquote conscious communities, and they're all like terrible and ineffective and awful for lots of different reasons. But like their relationship to money is, oh, this is toxic and capitalism is the end and we can't get anywhere near it. And then you have like the YPO stuff, which is like, okay, just how do we get more money, right? Like how do we, like, not to pick on YPO, but the professional networking, and they're like, how do I get more success and money? There's nothing in the middle. But like, I believe with some evidence in my own life and others that the quote unquote spiritual path, well, I'll sod the word spiritual, the best way to live is like finding a niche where you can do what you love in service of love. And I haven't found a better way of phrasing that yet. But differentiation and integration, what we're talking about, the path of complexity, the way, the Tao, the way everything works out. If I say that to like pretty much anyone, including post-economic people, of which I know a lot, they're like, yeah, but like, what's the deal with money? Right? Not everyone could just follow their bliss, dude. Come on. Like, that's ridiculous. That's an incredibly outlandish, mystical view that like, even though I get it conceptually, am I going to quit my job and betray my wife and 3 kids with their house in Darien that I've worked this hard just because you might be right about the metaphysics? Right? Like, dude, it's insane. Like, I doubt myself like at least 30% of the time, and I've seen it play out time and time again. It's money, dude. And it's almost like there's a trick. It's almost like there's a trick that stops us from looking directly at money and our relationship with money. But trust me, that's where the alpha is. Like, what does this represent? And I don't mean being dumb, right? Like, I know money is energy, yada, yada. I can't work out how much of any of that stuff's true. But like, once you work out what your relationship with money is, there's a lot in there, a lot.
I'll clip this if I need to clip this. That sci-fi movie where they have the thing with the time ticking down, that's the currency, and it's time on their wrist.
Yeah.
Keep thinking of this movie recently. I need to go back and rewatch it. It's been a while. Can't remember who was in it. But it's like that direct attack on time, currency, spirituality, existence, the social networks we keep around us, the fabric of our actually like lives and how we both track it and lose track of it.
Yeah.
That's some foundational shit right there.
Well, it's also like, all right, the devil does exist conceptually or literally, right? Like what's his most effective tool? His most effective tool is to waste your time, right? Like if time is the variable, if you're going to live forever, right? Like you want to just do what you love in service of love. And the devil is like, no, that thing doesn't exist. And also I'm just going to run down the clock on your life, right? I'm going to run down your shot clock by making like that doom scrolling real attractive. I'm going to run down the shot clock. Yeah.
The wise words of, I'm spoiling this one. This one was Gandalf. All we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given to us. Like,
there we go. There we go.
That's all you have to do.
But that's paralyzingly difficult.
Paralyzingly difficult in the worst ways.
Yeah. But
Super
because also you don't have to decide. Like, I think that one of the things that I got wrong, I mean, really like almost fatally wrong, is the idea that this is more amenable to rational analysis than you think it is, right? Like it just isn't. Like this is iterative, it's messy, it's incredibly disappointing, it's very difficult. It gets increasingly easier the more trust you have in the process. But just starting off in like an iterative process to find the real true path is really, really hard. It's why we've been telling stories for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years about how to do it right. You have to cross that threshold into the unknown. And no one ever said it's easy, but the cost is death.
On that uplifting point, people want to bug you on the internet, Tom. Where should they look up for these days?
I'm on Twitter at Tom Owen Morgan, although a lot less than I used to be. The platform isn't as good as it used to be.
Isn't the same.
Yeah, isn't it? And then I'm on Substack, The Leading Edge. And you can come get on my calendar at The Leading Edge as well.
Get on Tom's calendar. It's important. There's a crisis afoot. And these thresholds are there. And I believe it too. I think it's what level of responsibility are you going to take on this for yourself, for your family, for whatever else, and how you think about your place in the world. And the alternate is to suffer.
I asked like a really wise spiritual elder, like, what about my kids? And what about my wife and kids, like in the context of this? And there he was like, all of them are downstream of your consciousness, right? Like you got to work out how to evolve your consciousness, and they are downstream of that process. Obviously they're on their own journey, right? Like they've got their own lessons to learn, but like you will set that example for them by living the life you're supposed to be leading much more than you will through any kind of like professional attainment. And I think everyone intrinsically knows that that's true.
Believe that to my core. Wise words. Tom, been a pleasure.
Delight, as always, sir. Love you.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Zeigler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.